All right, back again on the CA podcast. Believe it or not, week 5 in the books. We are at a very interesting point in our league as the waiver keeper trade deadline is upon us, and we will get into a little bit of that later. But starting off, looking at last week's waivers, Deutsch dropped $100 on Matt Hasselbeck. It's kind of a puzzling decision, but one he was forced into. It's not that Locker was out; it sort of was that Freeman was on a bye, and that Deutsch was absolutely without a QB. Actually, at the time when he had to make the pickup, there was some concern that Locker would be out for a long period of time. He's definitely going to be out this week as well. So, the issue is that, in my eyes, I think Deutsch could have probably had Hasselbeck for $50 as opposed to $100. Didn't really need to blow the whole wad there. But, this means that in the last 2 years, Deutsch has paid $200 fab dollars on Matt Hasselbeck, Dexter McCluster, and Daniel Thomas. Oaks expertly, and I mean this without a shred of cynicism, expertly picked up James Jones for $15. Honestly, without any sarcasm, Greg Jennings is out, so James Jones is really the de facto number one receiver in that scheme. Especially with Rodgers as his quarterback, Oaks really intelligently picked up Jones for $15. He traded 15 fab dollars for 2 touchdowns, which was the margin between him going 0 for 2 and 2 for 2-0 on the week. So nice work there, Ander. All right, now if you guys will indulge me for just a moment, a brief editorial on the state of the league as we stand moving towards the keeper trade deadline, which is coming up this week. There's been a lot of talk about buying and selling. Plotzker started selling this year, kind of the second that it started. Oaks has made his intentions clear by emailing a select few owners about the availability of his top 4 players, strictly for auction dollars, and Kraus has sent out some feelers as well. Certain individuals, Ariel, myself, a few others have staunchly stood against the idea of selling out. There's no argument that going into the draft next year with an extra 50 or 100 auction dollars gives you an advantage. I mean, obviously you have more money to spend. There's your built-in advantage. But inherent in that perceived advantage is the notion that you will draft well. It's great to have that extra $100, but if you had it this year, wouldn't you have spent that on Cam Newton or Chris Johnson or Jordy Nelson or Mike Vick or any other high number of draft busts? You really only have so many roster spots, and it's often the guys that you get for less than $10 that make the biggest difference. Also, I had been ruminating on this week and actually read a very interesting research paper written by Dr. Ariel Glicksberg, and I will present you with what I found to be the most interesting excerpt from that. Dr. Glicksberg writes, "Now, if this was a keeper league with draft picks and you were selling your team, would you take a 3rd-round pick for a guy you took in the 4th or 5th round? I think most would. So why are teams trying to sell? Why are teams that are trying to sell trying to get so much more? Deutsch wants $60 for Percy Harvin. That is how much Maurice Jones-Drew went for, and more than Jamal Charles did. I think most teams would rather have those 2 running backs over Percy Harvin. Kraus wants $45 for Michael Turner. Turner has exceeded expectations, but for 2/3 of the season, would anyone pay a 2nd-round pick for a guy that might die soon? Kraus also wants $40 to $45 for Brandon Marshall. Again, I'm not giving a 2nd-round pick for a wide receiver that at his best is around a 5th-rounder and as worst is like a 15th. So what is the fair price? The only thing that I think buying players for auction dollars guarantees you is that you'll be at a disadvantage next year. If I go out and I pick up Adrian Peterson from Oaks and Jimmy Graham from Kraus, it'll leave me with $200 next year, and some owners might have double that. So it doesn't guarantee me of anything this season. It guarantees I'll be at a severe disadvantage next year, and it gives me kind of a wing and a prayer on some guys this year that might not pan out. Fantasy football is kind of too unpredictable to sort of package it like that. When the Yankees go out and drop hundreds of millions of dollars on A-Rod and Teixeira, they know they're marching to a World Series title. In the end, fantasy football, especially this league, is something we all do for fun. Getting a nice $700, $800 payout at the end of the year is great, but I'm guessing that's not the sole reason or even the most important reason why we're all league members. Why would I want to throw away my chance at beating Oaks by 1 point or beating out Billy and Ben for the wild card spot during a crazy Monday night game just so I can spend an extra $25 on CJ Spiller next year and hope that he doesn't regress? I won't hold it against anyone who tries to buy a title. I won't hold it against anyone who sells out for 2013, but you might regret it. All right, moving on to the power rankings. Coming in dead last, much to no one's surprise, Justin. Justin hasn't cracked triple digits since week 1. He's also lost 8 in a row since then. His team on paper is not atrocious, but Russell Wilson as a second quarterback is kind of an awful decision. Despite one fluke week for Michael Crabtree, he's not really getting anything from his other players. The future looks somewhat bleak for Justy, but if he can upgrade his quarterback situation, might be able to avoid rocking the clown shoes at C.O. Daniels. In at number 11, Plotzker. Plotzker had a nice 2-0 weekend, but he beat up on some real tomato cans. Normally, I'd have something nice here to say about how he's intelligently building for next year, but he literally just sent an email proclaiming my Red Bull 23-mile skydiving link as, quote, gay, as I was writing his power ranking entry. Bad timing, Plotz. Mike Vick is a fumbling waste of space, and starting Mark Ingram makes drafting Beanie Wells for $23 look intelligent. Number 10, Brian Deutsch. A big week from Brian, one that he really absolutely had to have. Even starting one terrible quarterback, might I add, Brian won the weekly scoring title. He actually got even a few bad performances from Jordy Nelson, Antonio Gates mixed in there, but blew past them with big games from Frank Gore, Percy Harvin, Ahmad Bradshaw, and performance of a lifetime from Marcus Colston. These huge point totals don't look like the types of things that Deutsch can kind of depend on from week to week, but he's got a feel good for now. It's always nice to recoup a little bit of the investment. So congratulations, Brian. Number 9, John Kraus. Kraus had a pretty ugly performance this past week, and despite the fact that he is 5-5 and tied for first, he has a pretty large gap in total points and kind of appears to be shifting into sellout mode. Rivers has totally regressed from 2 years ago. It's crazy to think of how good he was a couple years back and how unreliable he is right now. CJ Spiller is kind of proving incapable of recovering from his shoulder injury, and Deshaun Jackson and Chris Johnson have really just been out-and-out failures. Number 8, Denenberg. Huge drop from last week. D finds himself 8th in the power rankings. He put up a dismal, pathetic 66 points. He got his total points more than doubled up by his opponent, Ariel, this week. Joe Flacco has totally cooled off. Maurice Jones-Drew is kind of incapable of overcoming how shitty Blaine Gabbert is. Really, no one on Denenberg's team is trending up, with the exception of Jamal Charles. Really, what's surprising to me is Rob Gronkowski has not turned into the mega stud keeper of the year that we all thought he'd be. Denenberg's team is looking to avoid a 5-game losing streak this weekend. Number 7, Ben. Take a second and kind of marvel at what Ben's team was able to accomplish last night. With only, I wrote about this in the Monday morning update, but with only a 6.26 point cushion, Ben was able to take 6 measly points from his kicker Shane Graham and turn that into a half-point victory over his brother Billy. Peyton Manning keeps putting up really good numbers for him. Only $53, Trent Richardson is already in the early argument for best keeper of the year. For next year, I should say. Ben, has a pretty good-looking squad. Losing Cedric Benson is going to hurt him, but if he can keep everyone else going strong, he's definitely a threat to win his crowded division. Number 6, Andrew Smith. Smith got pretty lucky in beating Bootsy this past week as he would have lost to a number of other squads. He will get a chance to prove himself this week as he plays Ben and the resurgent Brian Deutsch. The week started off on kind of a bad note. Kevin Cobb was brutalized and harassed by the Rams defense. Things didn't really get much better for him on Sunday when Fitzpatrick and Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis both sucked it up. Smith has been getting pretty consistent points from Tony Gonzalez and finally got that huge game from Robert Meacham. Smith's patience really paid off on that one. So way to see that one through, Smith. Waiting is the hardest part. Number 5, Bootsy. I think I speak for everyone, Bootsy, when I ask what the hell happened to your team this past weekend. After 3 straight weeks of triple digits and 6 wins in a row, you stumbled to a 56-point stinker. RG3 got hurt, and so the fact that you start 3 Redskins finally came back to bite you. Vic Cruz goes out and catches 3 touchdowns, and no one else does a thing. So Bootsy should be hoping this is a 1-week aberration and not a harbinger for the rest of the season. In at number 4, Andrew Oakes. Big wins for Andrew last night. Arian Foster really did what we all thought he was going to do and ran wild on the Jets. I would say despite Andy's best efforts to sell out for 2013, he actually does have a pretty good squad for this year. He's won 3 in a row after kind of withering a 5-game losing streak. Cam Newton is sort of teetering on bust territory, but Rodgers has been pretty well statistically, and Foster is just unstoppable. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see if Andrew makes a big move this week if he sells out, but even if he doesn't, his team is going to factor into how this season's championship is won. Number 3, myself. No change from last week. I put me at 3. Let me kind of, take some time to apologize for my behavior on the podcast last week and via email the morning after. I do like my team. I'm not making anything up, as I think I've done a good job of putting together a good squad. But, it's never my intention to focus solely on myself. I did way too much self-aggrandizing. I started this simple podcast 3 years ago with the mission of entertaining the members of this league and treating my squad just like everyone else's. So over the years, I think I've done my best to ridicule bad moves and praise good ones. Myself, no different. I throw myself right in there. So just like I should be able to make fun of myself when I make bad moves, I also shouldn't be going over the top of my own team. So now that that's out of the way, did you guys see how good my team was this week? No, I'm joking, but I went 1-1. I beat up on Justin, which is not much of a feat, and I quickly lost to Oaks last night. But I'm still first in my division, second in the league in total points, looking good moving forward. Number 2, Bad Luck Billy. Billy leads the league in total points and yet is third place in his division. It's classic Bad Luck Billy. If you throw out his absolutely brutal week 2, Billy has not scored under 109 points in any given week, and his only major losses would have been to the weekly high point scorers in those given weeks, which were myself and Smith. He did kind of end up losing a heartbreaker to his brother last night, in spite of the fact that Ben somehow started the Bills' defense. I don't know, what is with Ben and starting the worst defensive option available? Remember when he started the Lions against the Packers in 2010? I don't know. Either way, Billy's got the best squad. Not the best, but he's got a damn good squad. Drew Brees is right there next to Arian Foster as the best player in fantasy. All right, now breaking with tradition, in an unprecedented move, we're actually going to be opening up the old mailbag during the power rankings. And the reasoning for that is going to become clear shortly. So our first letter is coming from Ariel. It's a multi-part question. We'll go one by one. He says, who is going to be the biggest seller or biggest buyer at the first trade deadline? What player do you think will get traded and have the biggest impact on the playoff race the rest of the way? I think the biggest seller, Ariel, will be Oaks. He's determined to ship the best player in fantasy, Arian Foster, as well as Aaron Rodgers and Cam Newton. Oaks has made it clear he's planning for 2013, and he won't rest until he's able to keep Peterson, pick up another good keeper, and get up to $400 auction dollars for next year. Whoever is able to supplement their current squad with Foster and Rodgers puts himself into pretty good position to make the playoffs, you would think. Ariel's next question. When you worked for the Bulls, they were the best team in the NBA. You left, and sadly, Rose gets hurt. You start working for the Fire, they have their first winning season since 2009. What are you doing to these teams? Very good points, Ariel. Let's not forget that I joined the Milwaukee Bucks in March of 2010, and they clinched the playoffs shortly afterwards, taking the Atlanta Hawks to 7 games. So, I don't know. I suppose I'm a good luck charm for these teams, but, if only I could point that out to my boss and maybe get a raise out of it. Also, if that's true, that means that only in the future will shitty teams hire me in an attempt to move towards the playoffs. So, not good news. In relation to you being a curse or blessing for your real teams, I follow that up with a curse that you have brought onto our fantasy league. After week 1, you had Oaks atop the power rankings, and he followed that up by going 0-2. A few weeks ago, you had Denenberg atop the power rankings. Since then, he has gone 1-3. This past week, you moved Bootsy to the top, and he followed that up by going 0-2 and RG3 getting hurt. Is there a Madden curse brewing? Are you ballsy enough to put your team atop the power rankings, or are you scared your 3 quarterbacks will get hurt if you do? It's a very interesting trend, Ariel. Thank you for pointing that out. I hadn't noticed that, which brings me to number 1 in the power rankings, Ariel Glicksberg. Ariel is, he's just off the lead in total points. He's won 6 in a row. He looks to keep that streak going when he beats up on Justin this weekend. Ariel is getting reliable, consistent numbers from Eli Manning and A.J. Green. Ryan Matthews looks like he's finally delivering for him, and Stephen Ridley really looks like one of the sleepers of the year. So congrats on the top spot, Ariel. Best of luck moving forward. And another question in the old mailbag coming in from Brian Deutsch. He says, what was a bigger letdown, the lack of action at the trade deadline or your dumbass email where the launch got canceled? If our league was a Survivor League, would anybody be left? Speaking of which, why don't we have a Survivor League? And finally, what are the odds that the wildcard team this year has a 500 or worse record? I think this is very possible with all the parity. Brian Deutsch. Well, yes, I'll admit the launch got canceled, so hindsight being 2020, my email was pretty stupid. However, it should be pointed out that in the event that it had actually taken place, it would have been sweet. This guy is going to jump from outer space and free fall for 23 miles. What if he sees God or bends the space-time continuum or something like that? Or even better, what if he shits himself at like mile 19? That would be hilarious. All right, I think Oaks and I would be left if we had a Survivor League. I think we've proven that we have a pretty strong track record as we've been long-lasting participants in the Scudder pool the last 3 years. And speaking of Scudder, I can guarantee that Denenberg would not be around. As per tradition, he obviously would be eliminated in week 1. Speaking of that, I mean, it's not too late to start a 12-man Survivor League. I don't know, is anybody down? $20 buy-in, pick one team a week, carry it on into the playoffs. I think it'd be pretty fun. It'd be, a nice little way to supplement what we got going on here. And then finally, Brian, the odds that a wild card team this year will be 500 or worse are actually pretty good, considering there's 9 teams with a 500 record or better currently. The parity has been, I don't know, it's pretty interesting this year. We're all still pretty early. There's multiple matchups. Anyone's capable of making a run, except, of course, your brother. All right, preview. Looking forward to next week. A couple of big matchups, starting with Billy versus Bootsy. Billy has Drew Brees on a bye, so he might be potentially hurting there, but he does have Julio Jones going against a shitty Oakland secondary that's gotten carved up this year. So look for him to get big points there. He's playing against Bootsy. Bootsy, we don't know if RG3 is going to play. I'm pretty confident. I just saw that RG3 was cleared for practice, but you never know with those concussions. And Bootsy's third quarterback is Matt Castle, who is definitely out for next week. So, I don't know. It should be interesting. If RG3 doesn't play, Bootsy's in a spot of trouble. He will have Willis McGahee going on Monday Night Football, so provided he doesn't fumble the game away again, that should decide things. Another big matchup for next week, myself versus Demaryius Thomas. I fucked that up. All right, start over. Another big matchup for next week, myself versus Ben. Ben is going to have Manning on Monday Night Football. He's got LaShawn McCoy going up against the shitty Lions. And then he also has the ever-present Trent Richardson, who actually put up 27 points the last time he played the Bengals. For myself, I've got Demaryius Thomas, which should hopefully help to absorb some of Peyton's points. But I'll be starting Andrew Luck for the first time against the Jets. Matt Schaub actually, struggled a little bit against the Jets. So who knows if Luck will keep it up. But he looked pretty good last week. So those are your big matchups. It was a good podcast this week. We'll see, if we have some interesting keeper trade deadline stuff going down. But otherwise, good luck this weekend, and go Bears.